Well, firstly, let me welcome you to the annual meeting of the American College of Sports Medicine and World Congresses held here in San Diego, California. Today, we have the great fortune of being able to interview past president and distinguished professors from Penn State University. Thank you very much for joining us. And may I say, a lead-in researcher in exercise oncology.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome.
I'm delighted to be with you.
Thank you. Let's begin with a little bit of background first. What first inspired you to pursue a degree in exercise science, sports medicine?
So I am on my third career. My first career was as a professional modern dancer in New York City. And I danced most famously with the Martha Graham Dance Company in the fall of 1988. And I realized after touring with a dance company that I didn't actually want to eat ramen noodles for dinner every night. That in fact I wanted a career that would allow me to still work with bodies and still work with people, but not have the financial distress of being a professional dancer. And so I started working as a fitness instructor, and it was right when certifications started to be a thing, you know. So I started doing fitness training and realized that I needed some kind of formal instruction. So I went through a 2-year program at Marymount Manhattan College and got my first certification as a health and fitness instructor from ACSM in 1989. And honestly, my undergraduate degree is in economics, of all things. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to make more money as a trainer if I get a master's. And I looked into the programs in the area in New York City, and I ended up going to Queens College and studied under the great Bill McArdle and Jack Magel and Paul Fardy and
then
Mike
what
Toner.
made you pursue your advanced degree?
So I finished my master's degree, and while I was working on my master's, I had the opportunity to work on a research project under the guidance of Paul Fardy. It was the PATH Project, Physical Activity and Teenage Health. And I have never in my life worked so hard for something I cared so much about for so little money. It was worse than being a professional dancer. And I wondered to myself, what have I gotten myself into? But I realized that I'd found my new passion, that I wanted to do research. And so I had the opportunity to go study under the great Dr. Art Leon at the University of Minnesota, and went out there thinking, gosh, I wonder if I can even do this. Can I even finish this degree? You know, I didn't know whether I had in me what was necessary to complete a doctorate, and here we are.
So, a fantastic beginning to your career. How do you go from there to then becoming a leading researcher in exercise oncology?
Right. So there was a very important join point. And it was while I was a postdoc. I knew that I wanted to be faculty. I knew I wanted to do research. I was a postdoc in cardiovascular epidemiology at the University of Minnesota. And I was staring down the face of what I thought was incremental science, because the big giant leaps in exercise and heart disease had happened already. They happened in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, and this was the 1990s. And one of the faculty that I turned to as a mentor, just because she was a woman faculty member, suggested to me, have you ever read any of the work on exercise and cancer? I'm just curious to know if you know what's out there. And it didn't take long because there wasn't that much. Right. But one of the pieces that was there was a piece by Anne McTiernan, and it was started with a call to action. and I can't remember the rest of the name of the article, but Ann McTiernan, 1995, A Call to Action, you'll find it. And it basically laid out the case for people trained just like me to pivot away from cardiovascular disease and to cancer, because there was so much work to be done and because my training would be so relevant to the work that needed to happen in the field of exercise and energy balance in cancer. And so with, I can't remember how many papers I had under my belt at that point in cardiovascular epidemiology, in obesity prevention, in these other, topic areas, but I made a sharp left turn towards exercise and cancer and never looked back.
In what year would that have been?
That was probably 1999. Yeah, so the field of exercise oncology at that time was truly in its infancy, and I saw the opportunity to get in on the ground floor of something that I knew would become, a robust field as
Sure.
it has become. There's a review that was written by Carrie Cornier and Christine Friedenreich, published in 1996, that included, the entirety of all of the four randomized controlled trials in the field of exercise oncology. And, of course, they concluded we need more research, right? So that's kind of where the field was. There weren't even 10 randomized controlled trials at that point.
How remarkable to where we are today.
It's been exponential. The growth in the field has been truly, truly exponential in the last 2 decades.
Thank you for all your work in that.
Yeah, thank you.
So as a student developing, and maybe even as a young professional, who might be some individuals that you could call out to be like, they were very influential in my development as a professional?
Right. I'm going to call out Ann McTiernan probably more than anybody else. Yeah. Because
and when
as
did
a
you meet
postdoc,
Ann?
I met her right after I read that paper, which was just a few years after it was published. And her email was on the paper, and I emailed her and said, I'm taking up your call to action. I want to do this work. And God bless her, she didn't laugh at me. And we met at a professional meeting in Washington, D.C., and she brought with her 2 of her R01s. She gave me 2 of her R01s as examples to think about how to write a grant in the area. Stop for just a second. She handed me 2 of her R01s. She didn't know me, she just trusted me with this information. She brought with her postdoc at the time, Melinda Irwin, who is another giant in the field of exercise oncology. So, I would say that if there is a single person that influenced my career direction, it would be Ann McTiernan.
What I think is fantastic from that story is how an email, right, reaching out to someone has led to where we are today.
Yeah. And her response, her extremely generous response.
So do you remember what year you became a fellow, or what led you to becoming a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine?
Yes. I don't know exactly what year it was, but I know it was between 2002 and 2004. And what I recall was that I was tracking where I was with regard to the requirements, and had been tracking it, for a couple of years at that point. And when
So it was something you were looking to.
Oh, I was looking. I was looking. And, I was paying close attention. And when I reached the bar, you had to have somebody recommend you. You had to have. And so I happened to be working at that point on a multi-site project that included Russ Pate. And a hilarious story. We were in Minnesota for, gathering of all of the sites that were involved in this project. And I said, hey, Russ, why don't we go out for a run?
He's a very good runner.
Not knowing what I was saying. And I just wanted to ask him to recommend me for, oh my goodness. I was sucking wind is the term that comes to mind, for about 3 miles there, and he was very kind and walked after that. And he when I did catch my breath and ask him, he was very kind and said yes, that he would recommend me.
So how do you feel becoming a fellow was instrumental in your career development within ACSM?
You know, I don't know if it's the same way now, but I know that when I was an assistant professor, as I was then, and a woman and a mother, a young mother, I had 2 toddlers at the time, I would walk around this big giant meeting with all of these famous scientists and all of this great work that people were doing, and I just thought, I'm not even a cog in the wheel. I don't even measure up at all to this. And getting fellowship legitimized me to be able to put my hand up and say, what can I do for the college? And I do belong here. What can I do for the college? And it was I remember crying, getting fellowship and having that walking the gauntlet of the past presidents. And
That is perhaps one of the best things about that fellowship event.
I know. I can't wait. Tomorrow night I get to stand up and do it.
It really is. It is fantastic to be able to see all those past presidents, and then you as an incoming fellow get to meet them and to get a picture with a section of them. It is a fantastic part of that event.
It is a grand, ACSM has some truly grand traditions. That's one of them to me.
And you went from being a fellow walking across that stage to now being one of the presidents.
To
get to shake everyone's hand as they come across.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So in navigating your career, what challenges have you felt you have faced? And then with that, what advice might you have for younger professionals who are in the beginning aspects of trying to navigate their career?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind when I was thinking about this question before today is context. I think that we have to recognize our context and work within our context. And what I mean by that is, I'll give a very simple example. One aspect of context is, how old are your children, and what are you, able to do, and what is feasible to do based on what your demands are for what's happening in your family. And so you're not going to do a study that requires you to be in the lab for 2 24-hour periods twice a week. While you see what I mean? That's not feasible. Another example, I'm at Penn State College of Medicine now, and it is a more rural setting than the other universities where I have worked. I was at University of Pennsylvania, and before that, Minnesota. And I had a difficult time getting grants funded until I started writing in about the context and having people to understand that I was able to reach a rural population as a result of being at Penn State College of Medicine in a way that my colleagues at Penn can't, right? So once I understood my context and I was able to explain my context, I then was able to take greatest advantage of what it was that I was capable of doing. And I think that, I've given you an example of, geography, and I've given you an example of parenthood, but I think that context can be seen a lot of different ways. Maybe you have mental health challenges and you need breaks during the day. Okay, great, take them. And what kind of work are you going to contribute when you are going to need a break in the day? I think that the advice that I would give is to recognize the context of your life, of your institution, and to allow your work to fit into that as opposed to the other way around.
In looking at the context of your life, what accomplishments would you say that you are most proud of? And I know I'm speaking to someone who has over 240 peer-reviewed articles to her name and over $25 million of funding just in this century alone. What accomplishments would you share with us that you feel very proud about?
So there are two that I'll speak of. One, I had the great good fortune of having a really positive clinical trial, the PAL trial, that was funded by the National Cancer Institute, and we were able to show with the PAL trial that slowly progressive strength training was not only safe, which was a change in clinical practice for oncology, but actually was beneficial for breast cancer patients with and at risk for breast cancer-related lymphedema. It also improved function and body image and upper body strength and body composition and quality of life. So there were all of these benefits. So we wanted to translate that, and I was able to get additional funding from NCI, and we translated it into a clinical program that is actually delivered by outpatient rehabilitation specialists, like physical therapists. It's now called Strength After Breast Cancer. And so you might be familiar with the storyline of the 17-year gap. So there is a well-described 17-year gap, average of 17-year gap between results of a positive clinical trial that show benefit and efficacy for a particular medical intervention and when it actually is disseminated and is standard of practice, right? And I did that in less than 17 years. That program is available in over 1,000 places in the United States.
Fantastic.
The training for it is available through a commercial entity for $125. It is the standard of care for breast cancer rehabilitation for the largest rehabilitation company in the U.S. called Select Medical. So I'm extremely proud of that, and I think it is making a difference in women's lives every day. So that one I'm very, very proud of, and I continue to want to expand that and work on that. And you know, as much as we have disseminated that, if you were to just walk out onto the street and ask somebody who has the experience of having breast cancer, if they've heard of Strength After Breast Cancer, the likelihood is that they haven't, right? So it's not quite standard of care. It's happening in a lot of places. 1,000 is a lot of places, but it's not everywhere. It's not ubiquitous.
But it's moving up.
It's moving up. It's moving up. So the other thing that I'm very proud of is the development of the guidelines. So I have been a leader for ACSM in the enterprise of developing guidelines, evidence-based guidelines for exercise and cancer. I had the
was it in 2010, the first roundtable?
So the story there is a good one because I was not a leader for that roundtable. But what happened is Carrie Cornier and Anna Schwartz were the leaders of that first roundtable. But towards the end of the roundtable, the question came up, who is going to be the first author on this paper? Who is going to take the work? Because it was going to be a huge lift. It was going to be a lot of work for us to get that done. And I put my hand up. And that's like, you asked me, what's my advice to junior investigators and students and mentees? Put your hand up. So I put my hand up and I said, I'll do it. And I spent 6 months full-time work doing nothing but that, with my boss screaming at me about not writing enough grants, but I will never regret it. So, and then it became really, really obvious that we needed to redo it, and I was really insistent that it be international and multidisciplinary the second time around. And so I actually raised the funds for the second one, and we held it in 2018. And the field literally grew exponentially between the two roundtables. We'll need to do another one in just a couple of years because the field is moving so fast.
That's great.
It is great.
What would you say are some of your most memorable moments from your service to ACSM, and in particular, your presidential service to ACSM?
Yeah. Jim Whitehead leaving ACSM would be the most memorable thing. I was president when Jim resigned as CEO of ACSM, and there was a team of 4 of us. One of the things to know about ACSM leadership, if this isn't known to your audience is that there is never a single person who is in charge, ever. That is like, it doesn't happen. There's always guardrails and checks and balances and, you know, counterweights. And so the college is led by the executive team, and that's the president-elect, the president, and the immediate past president. In our case, because of the timing of when this resignation occurred, we added the president-elect, which was Bill Krause. And so there was a team of 4 of us, Walt Thompson, Liz Joy, myself, and Bill Krause, who led the college through the process of the transition from our former CEO to the new CEO. And that was after 30 plus years of service from Jim Whitehead, tireless service from Jim Whitehead. And you know, I'm not interested in talking about, you know, good, bad, Jim Whitehead. What I'm interested in talking about is the college, you know, and the fact that we as the leadership team came in to Indianapolis and talked to the staff and said, you know, this is what our plan is. This is how we're going to handle this situation. This is what we want of you. What questions do you have? And you should know that no one resigned. They all stayed. They listened to what we had to say. Tim Calvert put his hand up, agreed to be the temporary CEO, and we got about the process of looking for a new CEO. And that was, I gotta say, I feel like that was historic, you know? It was a major, major join point for the college, and I got to be a part of it.
You are about to receive the Citation Award for all of your tremendous work in the field and your service to ACSM. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you feel about that?
So I have to start with the fact that the very first ACSM awards banquet that I went to was in 1994. I'm pretty sure we were in Cincinnati. And I went because my soon-to-be doctoral advisor, Art Leon, was winning the Citation Award. So I was starstruck, right?
Yeah.
And I think Jack Wilmore won the honor award that year. That's my memory. And I remember, you know, what people said in their speeches and who they thanked and just how humble and honored they all were. And I just remember thinking, gosh, imagine being that accomplished that the college wants to award you. Just imagine that, you know?
We won't have to imagine much longer.
And so, yeah, it is, I will say, I have won a number of awards this year. The Distinguished Scientist Award from the Society of Behavioral Medicine. I have just recently been named an American Cancer Society Clinical Research Professor. But the award that really means the most to me is the Citation Award.
It's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So having that background, what advice might you have for current professionals in ACSM to help them navigate their careers moving forward based on your extensive, great career thus far?
Put your hand up and jump in. Those are my two go-to statements is, you know, do not hesitate to raise your hand when somebody asks if anybody would volunteer. Put your hand up and jump in with both feet.
So right now we have 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds in college, earning a degree in exercise science, who will become the future leaders of our organization. What advice would you have for a young college student who is trying to figure out things in life and in careers and trying to take the next step to where they want to be?
So I have a great story about this because I was a dancer, and I had been a dancer since I was in junior high. And I thought that I was going to be a dancer my whole life. And when I decided to stop, I really didn't know what I was going to do. And I kind of tossed around ideas of being an Alexander teacher, that's a movement technique, being a massage therapist, being a physical therapist, or being an exercise trainer. And I really didn't know what to do. And I spent a good, long, horrible summer just kind of in a pretty gray place, because I couldn't decide. And so because I couldn't decide, I wasn't moving forward anywhere, and I just felt stuck. And I finally came to the place of figuring out, and this is my advice: just make a decision. It could be the wrong one, but you can't know that. If you are wondering, and I'm not sure, should I go to graduate school? Should I take this job? Should I move to San Diego? Should I do this? Make a decision. Make a decision with everything in your being going in that direction. Don't second guess yourself. Go. Because you're going to figure out pretty quickly if it's the wrong one, and then you'll make a turn. But you will have learned something huge about yourself by jumping in with both feet. Put your hand up and jump in.
Well, Katie, on behalf of all the membership of ACSM, I first want to thank you for sitting down with us today, and also congratulate you on this amazing citation award that will be delivered to you tomorrow evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.